Here we go. Okay, here we are. So here we are now. WaterSmart landscaping in a water scarce region. So before I go into our, there's some people still waiting in the lobby here. I'll meet them. In silk culture, the tamich concept refers to all living things, including plants, animals, water, and humans. And land management is not viewed as ownership, but a reciprocal relationship where humans take care of the land, so the land takes care of them. Hold on. Not sure why my screen is not moving. And here we go, maybe down here. No, it's not moving. Okay, yeah, here we are. So long before European agricultural methods arrived, silk people used controlled burns and selective harvesting. So this way they had they kept ecosystems healthy, biodiverse, and adapted to severe drought cycles. So the rights of silk water, this means that humans and all other living things share equal rights to clean water, and the water itself carries the inherent right to be healthy. So this way of thinking includes the well-being of streams, lakes, fish, elk, and even insects when making decisions about watersheds. It also considers the needs of future generations who will depend on the same giving water, life-giving water. So water is not a resource, but a living presence with its own spirit. Silk Water Declaration is actually a contemporary expression of silk water law, and it outlines silk principles, values related to water, responsibility, and relationships. It was endorsed by the Chiefs Executive Council in 2014. And there's lots of really wise sayings here, and I just wanted to refer to this one. Any use of water should be an act of reverence and a commitment to our responsibilities. So what is the regional identity in the Okanagan? As we all know, it's an ancient glacial landscapes with semi-arid climate and water limitations. We have rich but very fragile ecosystems. Agriculture and wine cultures are huge. We had fire-adopted environments that we a little bit screwed up. Tourism and recreation economy. It's a very popular region for tourists. So we have this myth of abundance, the widespread belief that the Okanagan has plenty of water, mainly because of its large lakes. So this perception is very misleading and risky, because we are depending on snowpack, seasonal runoff, and increasingly on groundwater, especially during hot, dry summers. So what is our reality? So here is the Okanagan Lake, which I read somewhere is really just like a giant bathtub that only refills a little each spring from March to July. Usually it tops up by 1.5 meters, and all the other water is old water. So this year we are 0.5 meter below the full pool, and it's a record low. In 2025, as you can see here, the Science Advances published this paper about unprecedented continental drying and shrinking freshwater availability. Continents are now drying at a global scale, and this trend is accelerating. And there's representing a long-term shift, not just temporary drought. Our region falls into one of these world's mega drying zones. You can see it here. And the groundwater depletion accounts for 68% of water loss in drying regions, highlighting that water management, extractions, and recharge practices are critical. We are not only facing less precipitation, we are facing a fundamental shift in how water is stored, used, and managed. And one area where a lot of water is used, and sometimes very inefficiently, is landscape. 24% here in the Okanagan. So in the Okanagan context, really, we should be using plants that have a water requirement that matches our precipitation. And traditional lawns and cedar hedges are climate incompatible, especially cedar hedges. If you, the volatile, the firemen are calling it the volatile fuse that can rapidly guide fire straight to your home with the flammable natural oils and dense dry debris. So what is a settler's perspective on lawns? It comes from European tradition. When first settlers arrived, the green grass in Europe symbolized wealth, order, and status and control over nature. So this thinking was brought over here. Lawn watering is treated as a completely normal practice. And in this view, lawns are standard, even in semi-arid regions where they do not naturally belong. And whenever there's a drought, we get temporary restrictions, water restrictions, and that's that. Whereas from siwڵkw perspective, water use and land use is respectful, and they all carry responsibility to care for land and water and right plant, right place, native ecosystems. Like we should adopt those types of principles, and some people already are in our gardens. And then long-term thinking for future generations. So WaterSmart landscaping really echoes siwڵkw principles of the land management, if you can actually call it management. So it's nature-based mimic natural landscape. We have our grasslands and our semi-arid shrubby steppes. So we should be kind of emulating that in our gardens, considering local climate. And then this way we could reduce the peak demand by 30 to 70% and still maintain thriving landscapes and beautiful landscapes. So I noticed there's a executive director from the Okanagan Xeriscape Association. Here's Sig Kendrick, and OXA gives a whole 4-hour WaterSmart Xeriscape landscaping principles. I don't have time to go into this too much, but basically we should study our garden, see how much lawn we do use. If we don't, try to find ways slowly to either replace it or find alternative lawns. Plant trees, deciduous trees on your south and west side to have shade in the summer and light in the winter still. Put hydrozoning, put plants that need more water closer to the door, and then have drought tolerant and native plants further away. Soil improvement is really important, and mulching, and yeah, you can do the whole planning of the whole landscape around your house in one go and then slowly execute it. And now we have fire smart principles. So in fire smart principles, deciduous trees are really hazardous because they catch on fire. But sorry, I said it wrongly. The evergreen trees, deciduous are fine. So, and then foundation planting. I don't know where that comes from, but it's very popular that people have plants planted right against the house. So from the fire smart design, we really should be getting rid of the evergreen coniferous trees and keep deciduous ones, move all the foundation planting away from the house so you can actually see it out of the window, and pave around the house. And this way you can reduce your lots of lawn as well with paths and decks and patios. So this is an example of a fire smart house. There's a deciduous tree and paved all around the house. So how can we manage what we don't measure? It looks like for now, for sure, universal metering is coming. This new booklet which just came out in July 2026, recommendations for a province-wide water approach. I think in the Okanagan, most of the cities do have metering, but the rural area have real structural issues for that. But it looks like they're planning that in the next decade, we should all be metered. And metering really helps with how can we track where water is going. And leaks, there's so many leaks that people are not aware of. We can't understand the real demand. And so I think that is a good move. People are still on their green lawns. So to actually, before I go further, I just wanted to quickly touch on cool season and warm season grasses. Cool season grasses really grow well in the spring and fall, and they go dormant in the summer. And most of our lawns that we have are actually cool season grasses, so they would naturally go dormant. We also have warm season grasses that don't really start growing well until the temperatures go to about 25 degrees centigrade. Buffalo grass is one of them, and I'll have a picture for that one later. Those don't start growing until it's warm, and then they go into dormancy in the winter, and they're brown. And then lawn survival watering. We really should understand dormancy because grass actually is very resilient and it can survive 3 to 4 weeks without watering. So even if you just water a brown lawn once a month deeply, the roots then remain alive. So that's something that I actually had killed lawn in my own garden because I completely stopped watering it, and now I know better. So we still have to give it a little bit of a water. And 1 inch is the tuna can. So roots of our native plants are incredible. They go up to 6 feet or more. That's why we can't dig them in the wild. Some people attempt to dig out like Balsamorhiza agitata, and you cannot dig it out. You kill the plant. So we can only grow them from seed. Whereas the Kentucky bluegrass, our lawn, you see the root here, how shallow it is. So that's why it requires so much water. So there's some options that are sold readily here at the Sagebrush Nursery, and I notice even regular landscaping like Garden Works places have these drought-tolerant turf options. And one way they work, you can just overseed your regular lawn with this seed. That's what I've done in my own garden, and they do come through, and you can see the difference between drought-tolerant grasses. They kind of have different blades, narrower, and sometimes they don't grow so tall. Another option is time lawns. Time lawns don't put up with too much of a foot traffic, but they are, and they maybe need a little bit water. They're not totally drought tolerant. The most drought tolerant that I find is yarrow lawn, and I have a lot, and my gardens are now mostly transitioned my lawns into yarrow lawns, and then I leave edges and sections unmowed for pollinators. But yeah, if you mow it, you get rid of the flower stems. And then if you don't, you get those flower stems, and then I just clip it off at the end of the season. Dwarf Dutch white clover is highly recommended. If you'd grow it by itself, it doesn't work that well because it dies in the winter and then you have bare patches and invasive plants move in. But you are mixing it with your low water turf, and it's really good. It fixes nitrogen for the grasses, and it's a good combo. And I allow them to flower, and then I just mow around sections. So these are some lawn conversions. This is one of them that I helped do. So they kept a tiny little lawn, and then the rest was converted into perennials. And Okanagan Xeriscape Association has one here from lawn alternatives. You see before, during, and after. And yes, with mowing the lawns, you have to go every week to mow them. This is still maintenance. There is no such thing as no maintenance garden. But to me, this is more fun. You just goes out every so often, pull out an odd weed. And then you have your seasonal spring and fall work, but you don't, it does reduce the work. It's just different type of work. Okay, and then a few years ago, I was involved in this pilot water use project in Summerland. It's more than 10 years ago. So I had volunteer residents that gave me their water usage. So this property number 1, it's a third of an acre. And in the summer, they use 700 cubic meter of water. It's a lush green garden. If you look at the background of the grayness, of the dryness. And then in the winter, the water usage is 7 cubic meters. So then I was thinking about what is 700 cubic meter? Can we even think about that? So then I looked at the 100 cubic meters of water, and that would fill up 500 hot tubs with 200 liters of water. So this is enormous. And then I went to our fisheries department and I said, but how does this relate to fish? Like how much water does salmon require? And I actually got really interesting information. It's really exciting. So 100 cubic meters of water supports a pond with 10,000 salmon fry. So if this garden would give all of its water into a pond for salmon, we could have 70,000 salmon fry developing. So then this garden here, property number 2, half an acre, they converted, this was a messy garden, and they did put a eco-lawn here because they play bocce game. So they do use a lawn, then they have a vineyard, and then at the front, it's a completely xeriscaped garden. So this property of half an acre uses 222 cubic meters of water in the summer. So that would be 22,000 salmon fry. And then here, there's another one, xeriscaped front, a large vegetable garden in the back, including the greenhouse. And these people also have a buffalo grass. And this is the hot season grass that I mentioned earlier. It only grows to 3 inches or so. It spreads by runners like strawberries, stoloniferous. So it creates these mats. I guess the buffaloes were lying on it. Anyway, it is not Okanagan native, it's the prairie native grass. So that one, then those goes dead in the winter and it goes completely brown. And in California, they spray paint it green. That is the grass, if you've heard how. And yeah, and I didn't mention that the summer usage is 224 cubic meters. So that's a big reduction from the first one. And then the fourth property gave me their data, and their garden is completely converted into xeriscape. They do have a buffalo lawn as well, these people. And then you can see they use only 85 cubic meters of water in the summer, and then in the winter they're away. So this gives us lots of things to think about. Oh yeah, and then at Summerland Ornamental Gardens, we had this large rose garden, 252 cubic square meters. And then in 2008, most roses died, and we took some out, and then we did redesigning, and we planted a naturalistic garden. And you can see even in the first year when we still watered it to get it established, how much the water got reduced from 160 to hundreds, say. So we need more of these kind of statistics so then we can actually understand where the water. So I'm switching now. I'm going into mulch because mulch is really, really important. It conserves water, that's number 1. It regulates temperature, suppresses weeds, and then as it decomposes, it acts as a fertilizer. And of course, it prevents erosion. So when do we mulch? Whenever you have a brand new startup garden, or you can also, if you want to get rid of sections of your lawn, you can use cardboard, lay it down, and then top it up with mulch. And then within a year or two, the grass will decompose, the cardboard is going to decompose, and then you can make little holes, kind of scrape away the mulch, and you can plant. So this was a planted garden. So you mulch when you're starting new gardens. You can use that to get rid of your lawn or newly planted gardens. These are the types of mulches that are available for purchase, except for the pine needle. We did an experiment at OXA several years ago about which mulches actually catch on fire. And of course, pine needles caught on fire the fastest, but the others were pretty good. We were very impressed. So there's another example of dense planting and mulching, and you practically don't even need to worry too much about the weeds. Inline drip irrigation, I guess the water gets completely, there's no evapotranspiration here. So siwڵk-inspired gardens connect to siwڵk teachings. Similarly, what we already said at the beginning, it's a living network of relationships. I've got some cheat notes here as well about responsibility and reciprocity. And then we have, we should restore native plant communities rather than rely on ornamental or invasive species to support pollinators and other birds and other wildlife. We can then provide food and medicines from culturally significant plants. We can encourage learning about interconnectedness of people, plants, animals, and the land. There's lots, and of course, sustainable water use. So here are some native plants, flowers that I use in my garden. And I started balsam root from pots. I purchased it at a nursery. I love alum root. Red columbine wants more shade, dry shade. Shrubby penstemon is great for rockeries or wherever. And then scarlet gillia, one of my favorites. Scarlet gillia, it's a biannual. It's the first year it just produces rosettes, and then the next year it flowers. And it's, if this plant gets watered, it doesn't make it. It actually thrives on complete dryness. I mean, if you look it up into the mountains where we walk, when we go hiking, these are the types of plants that survive without any supplemental watering. And then I'm just going to go through a few shrubs. And then these guys, snowberry, Nootka rose, tall Oregon grape, and sumac, which are spreaders. So they're good for erosion control. You have to have a very large garden to put those in because they will spread. And these are more gentle. I always put plants into gentlemen and thugs. So this would be more like gentlemen, gentlewomen. So I'm politically correct. And then these are thugs. They just spread everywhere. But I love them. I have them in my garden anyway. So there's a Saskatoon. Saskatoons ripen their fruits when mock orange just starts to flower. And they do really well in garden setting. Then we have our mock orange. This is in the wild, up on KVR. And this is in my garden. And I have lots of babies everywhere. So I've been moving mock orange all over my garden. And it's got beautiful scent. Rabbit brush. Rabbit brush it's an amazing food source for fall pollinators. 30 species of butterflies and moths, over 80 species of bees, our native bees, and we have 450 specimens, different species of native bees here. And then we have 15 species of birds. And my friend Dennis St. John, the lepidopterist here from the Okanagan, says that rabbit brush acts as a gas plant from the Okanagan all the way down to Arizona for migrating pollinators. And this is in my garden. I planted a whole hedge of rabbit brush and then Saskatoons in the back. You see, they still have a bit of berries on. Wax currant, one of my favorite plants. The one that you see here, I started from a cutting many years ago. Wax currants flower first thing in the spring. Again, they quite like dry ground, and they are the first to provide nectar and pollen to our bumblebees. Mine is loaded with bumblebees in the when it first starts flowering in April, and the hummingbirds come at the same time. And then we have Oregon grape. They always change the name. I still refer to it as Mahonia. Now they call it Berberis aquifolium. And he said and this plant does very differently under different conditions if you give it lots of water. I've got one in an area that has clay and must be wet underneath because it's a head now, and I have never watered it. And then if you have drier areas, it just lows more shorter, and it's a great ground cover because it does have those rhizomes. Anyway, sumac, beautiful. It tastes like lemon. They say if we run out of lemons, if we had a world collapse, this is going to be our lemon source. And it's an indicator plant because when leaves turn red, the sockeye salmon are spawning and turning red as well. Okay, so then I just wanted to give you some resources. Okanagan Xeriscape Association has a beautiful demonstration garden and a great plant database search. And they do events like Dig with SIG, so you can learn about plants if you volunteer there. Plant sale every spring, so you can buy drought-tolerant and native plants. Then I'm going to refer to the Make Water Work, which is under the umbrella of Okanagan Basin Water Board and WaterWise program, and they work very closely with OXA, you can see here, developing these plant collections. So the plant collections are developed as how much water different plants need. So 1 droplet is up to 7.5 centimeters per year. Then you have 2 droplets. I don't know what I'm better with centimeters, 10 to 18 centimeters, and then 3 droplets, 20 to 28. And I think they collaborate with an elder from West Bank that is giving them in siwڵkw names. So if you go on the website, you can get these plant list collections. And then Summerland Ornamental Gardens has one of the largest xeriscape gardens in the valley, and it is spectacular. So you should visit that. And also Summerland Ornamental Gardens have plant sales when they sell drought-tolerant plants. And then we have in Coldstream, siwڵkw Garden, Kalamalka Garden, that was created in collaboration with the OKIB, Okanagan College and Food Action Society. They do guided tours. I'm sure we could learn a lot. I haven't visited it yet. Then we have Ninkamip Desert Cultural Center in Osoyoos and Osoyoos Desert Center, where you can go on guided tours to learn about native ecologies and native plants. Plant nurseries, we have several. I mean, Xeriscape Endemic Nursery here in West Kelowna has an amazing website, and they actually have it's a booklet, I printed it out, of 200 species that are described in details, and it gives you all the information on where to plant them, what do they like. Sagebrush Nursery in Oliver, and then I think other nurseries also sell drought-tolerant plants. And then in 2019, we published Building Climate Resilience in the Okanagan book, a homeowner's resource guide that you can access if you go on ONA's website, or OBWB has it on their website as well, that talks a lot about water, climate, fire, like it touches on all aspects of living in the Okanagan. So in conclusion, WaterSmart landscaping is really a way of honoring water, to go back to our siwڵkw principles. And it's more than just a set of techniques. The WaterSmart landscaping reflects a deeper respect for water as a living presence. Sorry, I'm repeating myself. And it's a practical solution to water scarcity and a meaningful expression of stewardship in the Okanagan. This garden was created in Penticton, and it was a lawn before, and now it's a completely 100% native garden. And the only thing that is done here is pulling weeds every so often and walk through. So this is my last conclusion slide. I know this is a very brief presentation. But I just wanted to discuss something else now. So I want this like really a new discovery for me too. But anyway, the 12,000 rain gardens in Puget Sound, I knew when they started in 2011. So this project was to filter stormwater for the health of salmon safe. So working with communities and providing incentives resulting in the installation of, so far they've installed 6,202 rain gardens since 2013. And then installing these rain gardens captured over 150 million gallons of stormwater each year. Capturing the water in these rain gardens soaks the water into the ground and reduces toxic chemicals before they enter Puget Sound, engaging thousands of homeowners, volunteers, businesses, and schools. And building rain gardens brings communities together to maintain the rain gardens. When they originally started, they would have a champion on the street that would install a rain garden, and all the neighbors would help. And then they would be, I guess it's like building the barn in the old days. They would be helping each other with these rain gardens. But incentive programs help to overcome equity barriers in installation of these rain gardens. So it's very important that all levels of governments and communities are joined. So now, in our silk territory, we share the same responsibility, and salmon is part of Tamich. So going back into my fisheries conversations about 100 cubic yards of water supporting 10,000 salmon, what if we would do a little challenge here? What if we would call out for 100 WaterSmart gardens to support salmon? And if each garden would only give up 100 cubic yards minimum per garden, we would actually support 1 million salmon fry. And if we went a bit crazy and go the way the Seattle went and pledge that we would create 12,000 WaterSmart gardens, and if each garden would only give 100 cubic meters per garden, we could then support 150 million salmon fry. So I'm leaving it here with you. I mean, I think this would be an amazing undertaking, and lots of different groups would have to come together, and we could help protect and support our salmon. So this is it. Thank you, Lim Lim. Thanks for joining me.